Welcome to another episode of the Coaching Collective podcast, the community for coaches by coaches. Now here are your hosts, Ed Hamilton and Paul Blackford.
Today, we have a question from our community. We asked everyone to think about something they'd like us to talk about. And this one from Jess came in, and I'm going to read it out verbatim because there's some context around it. Hey, Paul, I'm not sure if you've covered it or not, but I'd love to possibly hear about how you as coaches have maintained a good work-life balance. With both of you having PTs, classes, study, family, etc., I'd love to know how you juggle it all, prioritize, and you don't end up burnt out in this industry, which can be so demanding of our time and mental energy. Thanks, Jess, for that idea and topic. It's a good one. So Ed and I have been bantering a little bit before we got started in and around this topic. I think what I'd like to do is start with posing a question to Ed, which is, Ed is a coach who works in a gym. He has face-to-face clients. And then outside of that, do you mind just running through some of those other components like study, family, extended family, and other obligations that you potentially have to balance in your life?
So I think I smiled when you were reading it out. It's like, how have you as coaches maintained a good work-life balance? I'm like, I don't think I've maintained it at all. I think it's a constant work in progress and always is. And we'll talk about like how we get some parameters around creating those boundaries, as we were speaking about before starting, to give us some context as to if we know that we're balancing it well or if we're a little bit lost.
I think that's an interesting thought for you, in that if you don't think you're maintaining it, and do you feel like that now? Do you feel like you don't think you're maintaining it?
I feel like it's just always changing, particularly in where I am in my life right now. So again, like your original question, giving context to some of those things. I'm a PT at the movement. I run obviously my business, Odyssey Southwest. I take a class at the gym on the Wednesday mornings. Study has probably been something that's been new into my formal study. I wouldn't say new, but somewhat sporadic, and then recently definitely been on the high priority list as I've gained what I feel is like really finding the niche and the company that I would really like to continue doing a lot of work with, that I find just has really fit well for me. Family is, yes, partner Kaylee, soon to be wife Kaylee, who also is a trainer at the gym and where we met through the movement. So it's obviously a special place for us. And then my two little boys, Louis and Will, so 2.5-year-old and a 5-month-old. So when it's like, love to know how you're juggling it, I was like, I would love to know how I'm juggling it too. But so I guess, like you said, context to that, that's from Jess's question. Weekly, daily, it changes, it adapts. It's particularly with young kids, I guess that's the hardest point where, and you know that from being at the gym with the movement with Adam and Ash and Shelbs and Cal and all the young kids and the families that we have there, that it's, on any given day, you can have a bad night, good night, you can do those things.
A lot of commonalities there, but just tell everyone what are your priorities? Just be very succinct, because there's going to be a whole ton of different coaches out there, singles, families, and all those situations. What are the priorities for you when you think about work-life balance?
Yeah, so being in the industry for so long now, that's changed across the time of being young, single, full into it, 100%, no real work-life balance, all work. And that was a detrimental thing as well, where becoming so enthusiastic and invested in finding my passion for what I do, getting out of balance in other areas of my life, like friends, and particularly that like social life stuff where I invested a lot into training and the athletic side of things and the sports side of things with when it came to CrossFit, and devoting time into what I felt was giving me a lot of purpose but missing out in other areas. And then as my life has changed and going, still obviously so passionate about what I do, but all the other life factors that have come in, I think it's really only been within the last couple of years, obviously with the kids now, that you start to see life for what's really important, and it gives you a different scope to look through and a lens to look through, where what was really important to me was a 200 kilo deadlift. So now I'm like, couldn't care less about that right now in performance. And I still love training. I have goals, but not willing to put the balance out for my family and time that I want to invest there. And So that comes back for me, and I'm assuming for everyone, it's like we said at the sides, finding what's most important to you, establishing those values, and like number one priority is always family. So it's okay, how do I provide? So what does my business need to look like so that I can support the family? Classes in the community, like how can I stay involved in the community as much as possible as I try to balance that? And that's obviously definitely something we'll talk about that's changed over time. Not that it was easy, but I feel like mentally, and can dive into that more mental health wise, it was a hard shift, almost a hard shift going from the life that I had been living for so long, which was like, I'm all in, 100% invested in the gym, when I said the gym, like my work, everything. So now I've got to spread myself out a little bit more. And I really did struggle with that at the start, like becoming a dad, and that transition was not easy for me. But now I feel like there is this nice balance where making some changes in certain areas has allowed me to find what works for me in regards to sustainability.
Yeah.
And again, we can talk about that. And on the question that Jess posed was like not ending up burnt out. We'll talk about crashing and burning and some pretty bad experiences with those, and then learning from that and being like, all right, well, that didn't work. Balance was all out. Work-life balance was non-existent. And then just, okay, reestablish what's most important. Break everything down, and then what are the changes that I have to make? What's the process that I need to go through to maybe figure some of that stuff out? And then go there from there. Right now, work-life balance is good. It's still tricky in regards to the time that I would love to invest in study, continued education, TCC, developing myself as a trainer, growing my business to see if I could be more supportive of the family. But then it's also, I love how much time I have at home. I love how I have every afternoon off. And I've prioritized that so I can say, right now the boys are so young, but when they're at school and then when they get older, I want to pick them up.
So no, you didn't always do that. You didn't always have those afternoons.
No.
And it's your experiences like having full mornings and full days, maybe in your single years, but like definitely for me, very similar. I took this career on later in life. I had a whole other career which had whole other demands of me and my time prior to that. And then this came along and I fell in love with it, and I love doing it. And that draw can potentially pull you away from other priorities. But I think the strategy is about splitting up your loves, actually looking at everything in context and go, what? For me, my situation is a little different. My kids are older, and that actually that shortens the amount of time that I have to be with them, spend with them before they're off getting on with their lives. And that's been a really big driver for me, balancing out how much coaching I can do, learning in that space, building a business, growing a business, and not have that take too much away from it. Needs to be part of the input for financials and my fulfillment and me being able to be completely there for Donnie and the kids. There's all of that, but it also has to balance out with time for me to be a dad and be a husband. And they're actually really the priorities. Then outside of that, be a friend and be part of a community and have a social life as well, which once again feeds back into my own health and well-being and being the best that I can for my family. So that didn't start out like that. The start was very similar to yours in that I was a newish coach, and any opportunity to help someone out, that's it. I wanted to jump on that, but it had to suit them. So it was this hour of this day and that hour of that day, and all of a sudden split shifts. And if coaches out there, you know what I'm talking about. And weekends, like there was weekend draw, and that starts to really creep into your family time and those other priorities. And for you guys out there, that might be other things. That might be sport. That might be time with mates. That might be pursuit of other endeavors, growth, learning, education, whatever that may be. I think it's important to think about the strategy that you employ to try and create work-life balance is actually looking at your priorities, because there will always be people to coach. There will always be people with problems that need to be solved. Once you learn how to get those people interested in what you do, and trust me, you start doing that, it won't take long to grow that business. Then from there, it's really important that you almost think about breaks. you have to actually put the brakes on at some stage and allocate time to growing this craft and working on all the other crafts that you have in your life, because that's exactly what you're doing. Craft of fatherhood, a big one for us. Craft of being in a relationship, massive. And then all those other things that life throws at us. And we're only speaking from our filter and our perspective.
Yeah.
I'm sure like Jess is potentially coming from another one in regards to asking that question. Potentially she's feeling the pressures of burnout, time, mental energy. I think she's got some young kids as well. Being a mother in the coaching space, what is that like?
Yeah. I think probably the biggest thing is maybe touching on like when it doesn't, because I know that's something you wanted to talk about. It's like when the work-life balance isn't there, and you're not juggling it, and the whole concept of burnout,
and potentially what that feels like, or what the mental, or let's just say mental brick wall feels like.
And our experiences within that.
And I thought actually to touch on that, I don't think mine have been as severe. I've gotten to a point where a change needs to be made. And I say that because I know that you've been through potentially a couple of times where you've hit some hard walls. And it's almost forced you into making some changes. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. The first one was probably when I was working up at Range of Motion with Dan. So I was there from like when I was 20 to 24. And again, that's talking about the time at the start, like work-life balance was like not really a thing. Everything was in one realm. So like what you were talking about, like I was probably 4 to 5 years younger than everyone else that was at that gym at the time. They became my friends. They became my community. They became the people that I saw the most because we all had the same common interests. And you don't really realize it at the time, but you're like, okay, I'm super invested into here, but then everyone goes their separate ways. And then for me being a young kid that wasn't dabbling in the social stuff or anything like that, it's like, just was like, okay, I just go home and that was it. And then rinse and repeat. So I got to like, when I was 24, I just sat down and I was like, great, look, you've worked really hard. You've put yourself in a financial position. It was like, my story was like, I'm going either two ways here. Got myself into a position where like, you could put a down payment on a house at 24. You could be super responsible and start that life now and dive in. That just means you're here for the next X period of time. And you are just going to work through, and you'll always be a trainer, or you'll always be at ROM, and this will be like the thing that you do, and this is what your next at least 10 years, 15 to 20 years looks like, right? Obviously, learn things in the way maybe, but like in my head, that was like, all right, if I make that decision from the way I've set myself up here for the first 4 or 5 years of being a trainer, then that's where I'm heading. And then I had a lot of other stuff in my life at the time, family stuff that I was working through, and from not having that balance, mental health was suffering. And I just remember getting to the point where I would be in the gym for 13 to 14 hours a day. Early morning clients, hang out, chat, train. I'm like, I don't really need to go home. I'll just hang out a little bit more. People are coming in that I like hanging out with anyway. And then next thing I'm training clients again. And then it's 7 p.m. and I head home. And I was literally at the gym. And that's what I would do, like most days of the week. And yeah, I just got to the point where I was like, all right, I'm burnt out. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I need to work through some stuff that I had going on that I need to deal with. And then that's when at 24, I took 6 months. I took 6 months. I moved back to the UK where I was like born. And so I went and lived with my aunt and did all that stuff. And then when I came back, I didn't have a job or anything like that. And I was still just using the money that I had built from that time in the industry to start burning through the cash. And then still had heaps of time. That's when I met Kales. She obviously had a lot of stuff going on at the time as well with her family. And it was still a few more months until I found my feet again. And then having the conversations with Cal and Shelves about coming down and starting to be a trainer at the gym. And I was like, I want to do it different this time. I want to do classes and I want to do this. And yeah, I'll do PTs because I'll need to, but like it was very slow. And then that obviously built, and there was so many skills and stuff that I learned within that time and adjustments from being in Perth to being down here as a skill of a coach. And then, so that was like my first experience with burnout, just not getting the balance right in different areas. And then the last couple of years, like a more challenging one for me was coming up to starting a family, talking to Cal and Shelves, being super supported in regards to the instability of the finances has always been a big thing for me. So being in an industry where, not having really developed myself as much as I feel like I have over the last few years, where I feel a bit more security in that from the skill sets that I've developed, and that's all been building. I stepped into a role that they created for me at the gym, which was the head coaching role. And as I was saying, like at the start, like being all in was all I'd known. So it was like, all right, from 19 or 20 to 24, I'm all in. Whatever it is that we're doing, we're going all in. And then it was like, cool, burnt out. And then it was like the same sort of concept that happened here, where it was like, all right, if I'm going to do this, I'm all in, and I'm going to invest like 110%. The tricky part with that was life wasn't about me anymore. Life changed in regards to, okay, now you have a kid in the equation. Now you have this to juggle. Now you have these things to juggle. And it got to a point where the stress of what I had done to myself in feeling so responsible for that position and not wanting to let anyone down led me to having a panic, like probably a really severe panic attack. And then I didn't really have anything after that once and this just goes to how thankful I am for the friendships that I have of like Cal and Shelves, and like immediately went over to theirs and we just had a chat, and it was like, okay, here's going to be the plan. And then as I worked through the process of like, why is this happening? What are the underlying things here why do I keep doing this to myself? It was like, okay, the easy thing that I want to do is to help people and hold massive responsibility. And I find comfort in that, but I seem to tip over the edge of my work-life balance because it's not about me. It's about other people. I'll do anything for anyone else, right? The thing that I had to change, the shift that I had to make was like, what do I want to do? And that was stepping into the uncomfortable realm of what does that look like if you actually do something for yourself? And I was like, all right, most people probably have or done in the past or maybe haven't, but I went and saw a psych and got to chatting and working through some things. And it was like, that's what came up for me. Responsibility for others. It's just something that I've always had in my life, family stuff. And then like I said, the uncomfortable thing was to say, okay, I'm not going to be responsible for others. I'm going to be responsible for me and my family, and getting rid of the framework in my head that was selfish. That was a big sort of turning point, I feel. And then like anything, it's just the more you practice it. And at the start, it's like an extreme where you're like, you almost have to be a little bit selfish. And those decisions that you make, like maybe not helping out here or not.
You do have to be.
You do. You have to be like, all right, maybe I would go and help do that thing, but I can't. Actually, I'm going to do this because this is what I want to do. Well, this is my value of my family, so I'm going to actually prioritize that. Oh God, that's really hard to sit in.
Hormozy, he did it. He said it the other day. Every time you say yes, you're saying no.
Yes, I'm saying no to something.
Potentially something that's more important.
And so that's probably been over, obviously, the time now of having the boys that I've really practiced. And I think now in my life, I'm more comfortable in doing that. But it's also because you've set up the systems and the balance to be able to do that. So like now, for me, I absolutely love the gym, but couldn't hold that position to the standard that I wanted to. And hard conversations, and it wasn't like an easy decision, but to step away from doing that, and then being able to put more eggs into the basket of Odyssey and rebranding from Ed PT or MAP at the time I think we were doing, to Odyssey, and then launching that and being like, I'm going to launch my own thing. Even though I'd been in the industry for 9 years or something, 10 years, it was like, you're actually going to put yourself out there. Because I was always like, no, I'm just a trainer at the gym, like at the movement. Or I'm just a trainer at range of motion. It was never like, that's my business. It was never like, oh, here's this thing that I create, like I created. Like that to me was just the scariest thing.
Yeah, the
hardest thing to do. And be like, what if it sucks?
You guys need to go and check out his website. It doesn't suck. Actually fanboying today. Just saying, fanboy. Yeah.
But yeah, that was my journey in regards to experiencing burnout and struggling with that. And then, coming up now and practicing the skills of being selfish, but also it'll dive into probably the next topic that we briefed at the start. That just comes from setting those boundaries.
Okay, cool. So I want to talk about boundaries in a minute. I think the biggest takeaway that I heard you say was with the part when you were talking about going to see the psych, and that was to work on what you want. This is the core of the answer to Jess's question, because, and I think I read it in Changemaker, that's John Berardi's book from Precision Nutrition, but he talks about coaches. One of the reasons why coaches get into this, what we do, is that they're super driven to help people, that altruistic need to see a problem, I can help, I can fix it. And because we've said it before, health is a really important thing to people. Health, longevity, feeling good, not being broken, not being injured, all those reasons, postpartum women, and all the reasons why we help people feel better, feel more capable and stronger. We are driven to do that. And so the more of those opportunities that come up, yes is easy. It's so easy. You're going to be better at doing that if you say no. Didn't we do a no coach thing? I'm sure I did a no coach thing.
I did a yes coach thing.
Don't be a yes coach?
I think it was don't be a yes coach.
So be a no coach.
Yeah, basically be a no coach. Yeah.
But that's the story. Be a no coach, because if you can look at what your business needs to be for all the things that you want, and you need to start with really thinking about what you want. It's going to include things like family. It's going to include things like the end goal, what you want. We were talking about this earlier today, that what you want to be, what you want to do and give to the world in your lifetime. All those things are really important. And I've got a ton of people that you could follow to help you decide what those things are, because that's not easy. Sitting with those things is tricky. But start there. Start with those priorities, and then you can build the structure in your business to support those priorities. And they're your boundaries. That everything outside of that is a no. Everything inside of that is a yes. And those goalposts are not fixed.
No.
They are a forever changing dynamic system that you have to continuously get feedback from and feed data into.
Yeah.
So maybe we could talk a little bit more specifically about setting boundaries. And I can start by literally talking about how I split the day, because this life can be very much a split shift scenario where people have jobs and they need to work, so they want to train before that or they want to train after that. And so you end up getting this whole split scenario. Not many want to train in the middle. For me, I needed to give my family one. I decided I needed to make sure that I was going to be there for them in either the afternoon or the morning. So I've chosen the afternoon, and so I've set boundaries around when I will actually take clients, and that's morning for me. I think it's similar for you.
Yeah, same. I've always been a morning PT, and I've always been up early. And again, there's the same thing as I said at Robin. It was like mornings and nights. Like at the start, it's just like, do everything, do whatever, train people whenever, whatever. Like I didn't have it, like we said, those limitations weren't there. But the same thing of choosing, setting those boundaries, choosing, like setting your values, seeing what's most important to you, and then, like you said, working backwards from there is the best way to set those boundaries. We're very similar in that way that, and like you said, the goalposts don't move. So sometimes it'll be like, hey, we need help at the gym to cover this class or this and that. And that's fine. It's just when it's the constant, and the constant boundaries are like constantly, you're always overdoing it, like every single time. Overstepping it.
I've overstepped a little bit lately. Actually, I'm at a point where I've got to rein things back into some of those boundaries, because I've let some things get outside of those boundaries. And I felt the impact, and so it's not a negative. It's actually a positive in that reinforcement of actually this is what I want, and now I'm not getting time to do that. It's actually impeding on other things, like if I can't do some of my business stuff during the afternoons for whatever, because I've overcommitted, that stuff flows into the weekend, which then impacts family.
I think it's like almost off the back of last episode that talked about failure. It's like the conclusion that we came to there was like consistency wins.
Yeah.
And it's always the message that you hear from everyone. It's like, just keep going. But consistency wins in like the ebbs and flows of being a trainer is you can be super busy and you can be super not busy. And it's obviously the better you can structure your business and all the things that go into that, marketing and just you as a product yourself, you can be more sustainable. But it doesn't change like some point everyone goes to Europe for the middle of June because they want to get out of winter. Or everyone, but like 3 or 4 clients of mine might go over there and say, oh, okay. That's 3-4 sessions gone for the week. And then what I mean by that is just having those boundaries in place so you can know like yourself when you're going over the edge. You might have a short window of time where you can do that, but you're going to draw yourself back in or understand where they are so you can make those changes, versus if you're in that scenario where you're trying to set them, like, again, if the question's coming from Jess, maybe it is the family life stuff. It's like trying not to ride that wave too much, where I've got to be super busy when I'm super busy, and then I'm going to, like, because I know it's going to come down, you know what I mean? That happens all the time, particularly as, say, new to the industry or as a trainer. That's just like part and parcel of the gig. But I guess what I'm trying to say is it all comes down to awareness, but the consistency is in over time, you're more often than not in your boundaries than you are crossing over them.
Yeah.
Because you understand where your boundaries
Like
are.
an 80-20 rule?
Cool, like an 80-20 rule. So like you understand, like you're like, man, this feels like I'm overdoing it. Right? And it's not, I guess that's one of the other things as well. And it was actually a question I posed to you the other week was like, when is enough? Like, when have you just done, I'm doing enough? Because again, that's just a human being. We're always like pushing forward more. I need to do more. I want to grow. I want to get better at this and get better at that. And then
I don't know if all human beings.
let's just say,
Just the superhuman ones.
yeah, okay, let's say that. But
Coaches. All the coaches are.
But it is like that. If you are that type of person, then you always want to be pursuing betterment. And it's just been a concept in my head of recently of we've got plans and goals, but it's at some point there's almost, this is good. Life's good.
Yeah.
I go and I have my clients in the morning, and then I train with you, and I'll see everyone in the gym that I like, and then it's cool. Now I go home and I chill. And I have some things that I need to get done in between this time, but life's good.
Yeah.
I'm sweet. I'm ticking my boxes. I've got my schedule. And I know there'll be more people out there that like schedule every minute of your day, do this. And it's something that like, I think I would like to do, but having kids is so sporadic. Like having young children
I love
is
that
like,
idea too. But like today, you know,
yeah.
I wouldn't have blocked out 2 hours to do our session.
Yeah.
But it took 2 hours.
Yeah.
We worked for 24 minutes, but it took 2 hours.
Yeah.
Actually, but those 2 hours are important.
Yeah.
They actually are.
Yeah.
They're important to me.
Yeah.
Like, there was some client interaction. There was some stuff we covered on TCC that, you know, and it's just being in that community at the gym. Yeah. Where have we get off track?
No tangent.
I think I pulled us off track.
I think I did. I went consistency. You're talking about boundaries.
Consistency and boundaries. Yeah.
The two things.
It's not moving goalposts, right? They're not always going to be in the same spot. And you do have to, and life changes. So you do have to shift in and out, and things are going to go wrong. I think coming back to Jess's question, we might need to wrap it up in a minute, but she is talking broadly across being in the industry. And if that's going to be a long-term thing, it needs to be sustainable. And if that's going to be the case, we are human beings. Coaches are human beings, and they have needs outside of giving what they give to the craft. And so making sure that they're actually looking after themselves. And I love the fable of the golden goose in this scenario. Right? You are the golden goose. You have to look after it. If you kill that golden goose, the eggs stop. It stops.
Yeah.
That's your scenario, the hard wall.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so take care of the golden goose. Get those eggs flowing.
Yeah. I think, if the question is, how do you juggle it? It's understand where you're at in your career. If you're going to be more specific to like the PT space or coaching space, like I said, if you're a young trainer, it's like, still have that balance, but then like just keep a mind on your values at the time, right? And then also like your goals, because at the end of the day, some things, if you have big goals, sacrifices do need to be made somewhere. But just being like what we said with you, it's like you may be overstepping the boundaries, which is a sacrifice you're not willing to make, which is based upon your values. So am I making the right sacrifice here? How much do I value this thing that I'm doing as a coach and want to build in versus these other values of my life? And then run that filter of every time you're like, okay, how am I juggling this? I'm sacrificing too much of the things that I value highest to put energy into something that I want to build or develop that I value, but not more so than the other. And I think that's the juggle. I think juggling it is the whole thing. I think that's probably the best word in that question, which is like, how do you juggle it? Yeah, I juggle it.
Yeah.
It's not a constant, consistent thing. But like we said, if you have those areas to look through, or those values to look through, or that framework is another thing that we always talk about, coming back to like having a framework in regards to how you make a decision. If you're more on that track than that, then you're not. You're heading in the right direction over the long haul of a career or whatever that may be, extended period of time, and trying not to see necessarily things in terms of days and weeks, but what does that look like if I keep this up for extended period of time? And I think that was just something, again, if we do a little bit of a circle, that being younger, I didn't see. It wasn't like thinking about, but it's like now if I think about it, it's like if I sacrifice things, I lose 5 years, where's my kids? What did I miss out on? Yeah. What did I sacrifice in order to build that business or make that much money or whatever it is that you're doing? That would be my answer to that question, is keep juggling.
Keep juggling golden eggs.
Keep juggling the golden eggs.
I had that story about Jimmy. That was going to come in somewhere around boundary setting. Yeah, it's a story.
We can come back to that another time.
The carryover is that there's a lot of different coaches out there. You might be online, you might be face-to-face, you might be hybrid, potentially models that we haven't thought of yet. But same goes for all of these. And potentially a shift between models is actually a solution to specifically finding the boundaries that work for you. Because not all coaching models need to have that early start. This is something I've definitely been thinking about. Okay, how do we make that something that's sustainable? But anyway, that was a whole other story.
Hopefully we've helped, or hopefully maybe we've answered that question, but given some light to it. And
really some fuel for thought.
Yeah.
And love to have some comments on this whole idea. If anyone's listening to the podcast and just wants to drop a comment or had any experiences in or around their own work-life balance scenarios, love to hear from you. So comments, Spotify, YouTube, all the comments.
Yeah, I guess keep an eye out for next episode. Next guest.
So exciting.
Very exciting.
Exciting because this is all our guests, because our guest podcasts are epic.
Yeah.
We love them.
We love them.
They're so good. Even the ones we don't record. Sorry, Dan. Okay.
That'll be it. That's it.
We're out.
We'll catch you on the next one.
See you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Coaching Collective podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and YouTube. Join all the action on the Coaching Collective Discord community by visiting join.thecoachingcollective.eu. See you in there soon, coaches.